Here, Vijay, as you rightly said, let's open. We define two personas. One persona consumes data,
Yeah.
and his or her level of interpretation is very different.
Right.
Whereas the other persona's way of interpreting the data is very different
Right.
because he needs to take decision on the consumption
Right.
of the audience oxygen, right?
Right.
And someone looks at very positive if the oxygen level is very good,
Yeah.
right? So these two personas are different. Then how do a designer, the one who designing experience, can balance both the platform? Because the same product has been experienced by two different personas, but the interpretation of that is very different. So how do that is get balanced?
See, this is where business scoping comes into picture.
Okay.
What is the overall vision of a particular business? Most of this will invariably be a business idea initially. Now, for a hospital, if you are serving, let's say, an X number of consumers, and most of your B2B solutions or your supply chain solutions are in place, and the cost of reinventing the wheel, let's say, touches 13 crores for the overall development. And rather than doing that, you possibly will prefer to create one more cardiac facility in the hospital and save more patients, rather than creating a digital solution to inform and tie up all the stakeholders. So then again, the call becomes where the way business focuses. While there, a designer may have a point of view, it's important then also for a designer or an experienced designer to understand few challenges which a business goes through. And then this goes back through a very long discussion and an argument in the design fraternity, which is called as a business design.
Okay.
Which simply says, does a designer also need to go through a management or a business training? The answer is yes, but there is a percentage of that.
Okay.
And there I'm stepping into a new area and allow me to do that, which is called as an icing on a cake theory. Right? To every individual, there is a core of a discipline. So when you consider, let's say, a cake, which is a birthday cake, the core of the cake, is it the cream or is it the spongy bread area?
Okay.
It's actually the spongy bread area. But on the cake, you also have a fruit, you'll also have a cherry.
Yes.
Or probably some garnishing of chocolate as well. Right? The chocolate garnishing would basically be 5%. The cherry is 1%. The cream is about 13%, and the balance is the cake part. Right? But if you remove the balance part, which is the 70% core, will it still remain as a cake? Answer is no. It will become just a cream.
Yes.
Right? It possibly will become ice cream. The entity will change.
Yes.
Similarly, in every discipline there is a core. So in the case of design, just because it's not an organized discipline, and I'll come to that later on as well when I say it's not an organized discipline. The core is design. The core is problem solving. The core is whether it's product design or it's experience design, but the core is solving a user's problem over there. But it's always advisable for a designer to also understand the supply chain. It's always good for a designer to also understand business innovation cycles or some bit of finance, that how difficult it is sometimes is for a business to arrange for finances, how the cycle of finance flows, that the work which is being done by a designer today, how long it will take for the product to actually earn the revenue such that his or her salary is also duly paid. Right?
Sure. I think this was very good explanation on the proper balancing of design. Moving further, the second question to you, Vijay, is what is the true sense of interaction design? Is it only designing interfaces for mobile phones, or because see, mobile phone is practically a physical product, but the app what I'm using inside my mobile phone, that is a digital asset, right? So where do you relate this with your interaction design?
For this, it's advisable to go back to the history of human interaction.
Okay.
It's always advisable to sometimes understand the entire historical context of interaction. Did interaction design just happen 15 years ago as an organized discipline is a larger question. To understand it's better to look at how the caveman grew. Right? To that particular entity, the first interaction itself was plucking a particular fruit from a tree. There, the the default software guided that particular human at that point of time that grass is not my food, but apple is a fruit, is my true food. Because plucking a grass was not a very natural entity as compared to plucking an orange or a banana. And if you look at all this, if you look at the entire genesis of, or rather the patterns of biology, which is across species, every entity has got some bit of software embedded in the brain. Any entity which has got consciousness and thinking as a pattern. So a sparrow will also have a thinking.
Yes.
So sparrow will not go and poke the beak on a watermelon or a jackfruit.
Yes.
Sparrow will intuitively know without going to any educational institute that my food is the grain which I have to pluck while sitting on top of that plant, right? And the plant is designed in such a way by nature such that it can actually hold the weight of that sweet little sparrow. While we also eat that wheat as a grain,
Yes.
right? But imagine a human sitting on that top of that
Yes.
that entire shaft and then try to eat then and there. That means if the entire crop is not able to hold my weight, the crop is not meant for me, right? So I can sit on a tree and I can pluck an apple. That means it is designed for me, right? So this is one of the background knowledges that we have kind of lost over the subsequent generations because we became kind of curators, we became designers, right? And fire came in, and there were many other factors. Let's not go into that. So I'll come to the core part. So looking at all these patterns, so there are two things which kind of get evolved. That humans as a species, it evolved over generations, and all these memory patterns got recorded in my DNA. So it's not today that we are able to hold a marker effectively. We learned that through various generations where I was first holding a spear or a stick to throw at an animal to kill it. Because I, at that moment, or a human at that moment, designed or decided that intuitively the size of the palm, the grip of the finger, or the variations of the five finger can possibly lead to holding a stick rather than holding an entire stem. That's why that became the first tool. Then it later became sharpened. Then they further took another stone, which was again the size of the palm. Right? Either you throw it or you tie it up to the entire stick and create a tool out of that. Right? And the length of the tool again was apt for the usage of that person. Did that person actually did an organized formal product design? Answer is no. So if you look at the entire genesis of interaction design, it's difficult to say that it actually evolved over the last 15 years or 50 years. It is millions of years ago. Right? So we started picking up those patterns and now we are just building on top of that.
So I think Vijay, while you were describing few about interaction design, you came up with the term which is nature design, right?
Yeah.
Where the sparrow can sit at some plant and have a food, but a human being will not be able to.
Yeah.
Right? So can you just explain more on nature design or natural design, or what is this term like nature experience design?
So there are two words over there. One is experience design that we initially touched upon. There is something that we briefly touched upon, which is natural ergonomics.
Okay.
Which is the size of the sparrow's beak and the grain which goes inside, the size of the beak of a swan and the fish which goes inside. Everything has been designed in a certain order, and all the software is intuitively available in every species. We apparently are the only species where we intermix various patterns and we created our own theories because that's an empowerment which is given to us. Otherwise, for most species, let's look at bees. The size of the nest which they create or the hive which they create, which is a combination of various colonies or these buildings or these rooms which they create, is apt for a certain bee to get inside and to come out effectively as well. Right? But there as well, they design as per a certain order of physics or the gravitational force, which is in certain shape. You will not come across where the bees got creative and they did a star-shaped beehive, or they did a heart-shaped beehive, or a perfect square-shaped beehive. You will not come across those examples, right? So collectively as a community, they knew their individual responsibility that I have to do this, but there was of course a master curator who knew that this is the generic size and the dimension. If you see, it's not perfect round or any height. It's in a certain size, certain shape, and a certain dynamic so that the air can pass through. It's not it's flat on one side and it's flat on other side.
Yes.
Right? So did someone dot them? Answer is no actually. Right? Everything is given to them in a certain natural order. So the problem which happened with us is the years and years of education that we got, or the civilization the way it grew, we kind of started avoiding that. And we brought the discipline mainly to a digital screen. That is where the fundamental problem started happening, where our age-old traditions, which we have learned, of course, from nature, most of this was then learned there. They had no organized discipline to burn clay, to figure out what should be the size of a door. If you look at most communities, particularly the old agrarian communities, like the walls used to be nearly 2 feet thick. They were actually 2 feet thick walls because they were insulating walls, right? There were two dimensions why the door used to be small. Most homes they had barely 3 feet high doors. Person had to bend down, and there were two theories. So they used to worship that entire entity. Home was a worshipping area, and they used to bow down before they used to get in. That is stage one of the reason. Second, they also designed that because for an animal it was difficult to get into it, right? So it was designed with a certain purpose, right? So just imagine now, like how do I use that interpretation in my payment gateway? Yes. Right? How many transactions should be allowed? What should be the my indication of the data which should be allowed? There are so many inferences that we can actually draw from those words. Like let's consider the design of a latch. Or if you see there was a chain which used to hang on a door. Yeah. Right? What was the twofold purpose? It was a bell as well. The chain was heavy enough so that you can hold the chain and you can lock it, right? And then you can also latch it. Another advantage with that was you can actually pull it to close the door. So we were solving with the lock three purposes. Like where are those principles now? When we actually do a physical product design, it's not there, right? So you have to go back to some bit of history and see how improvisations can be done. Of course, the metallurgy of those eras were different. We've improved on the metallurgy, right? The corrosive values have changed as compared to those years, right? There are a lot of inventions, of course, we can actually draw on that, but it's advisable sometimes to go back into history. And from an education perspective, neither technologies are taught that. MBAs are, of course, not taught that, right? Even in design fraternity, when you box a discipline and you only bring it only to a screen design, in interaction design, we are losing a lot on what has been inherited from our jungle ancestors or from the agrarian population. Is the humble submission, and it is a food for thought for academicians to possibly do a course design. The last connected thread I will touch upon, I'd love to touch upon that area, and though we were thinking we'll possibly touch upon that in later part of the discussion, is the entire design of the curriculum. The current problem in the entire education academia fraternity is while engineering courses are licensed and there are bodies who regularize these courses, that whether you're being taught in Kerala or in Jammu and Kashmir or in any IITs, any premier, you at least pick up the 80% of the same essence. Of course, there are digressions, you can have electives and all, but in the case of design as a broader discipline, there is still no regularization which has happened from center or from academia. You can have your own course, you just get your license and you get going and teaching people, right? So, three bunch of people, good professors, they design a course, and now for 5 years or 15 years, people are getting taught on that, right? That thing was challenged a lot in the ancient India when we had the Takshila and the Nalandas, right? Where every region had gone one specialized discipline, and depending on the latent talent of the girl or the boy, the person was advised to go to X particular university, and somebody was good in astrophysics. Somebody was then advised to go to Kashmir, go and get admitted in that area.